Welcome to the Expressions of Destiny podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer, and welcome back to part 2 of our mini-series on burnout culture. So last week we dove into what burnout is and how we can identify it in others. And so I want to kind of cover those real briefly just to give you a summary. But I do encourage you to go back and listen to that episode. Part 1, we discussed what is burnout, looking at the emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion. Signs would be insomnia, irritability, forgetfulness, physical instability. We dove a little deeper into what that looks like. And then we explained that burnout isn't just about personal responsibility. It's about workplace culture and leadership. And so some of the ways that leaders contributed to this burnout or to this day still contribute to burnout. You may find yourself in this place in your business or in your personal life. But a lot of the things or ways that leaders contribute to this is overloading their employees. It could be poor communication, ignoring their well-being. An example would be an employee constantly asked to do more with fewer resources, which leads to stress and exhaustion. So these were just some of the points that we put out there last week. Now we've received some really great feedback on episode 1. So once again, go back and listen to that first part, really identifying burnout. But today we're going to cover the leadership issues behind burnout. So it's time to talk about how we can fix it. Leaders, if you're serious about preventing burnout, it's really time for you to step up and change the way you approach your team's health and workload. Now that may sound harsh, and we will be getting into the employee side of this, but for today, we're focusing on leadership. We're going to focus on the leaders because this is where it starts. It starts at the top, and it is a truth. And so we just want to come to a place where we're able to help understand why these things occur, why our employees are struggling, why leadership may be struggling. And so everything has to start at the top. And so let's just go ahead and jump in here today. So here's a hard truth that I'm going to throw at you. Employees don't create burnout culture. The leaders do. I want you to hear that. I'm going to say it again. Employees do not create burnout culture. The leaders do. And I want to kind of put a little bit of a background on that, because when you think about employees versus leaders, employees are not the one who created the business. Employees were not the ones who had the vision. They were not the ones who had the idea. They weren't the ones who were the entrepreneur who brought this thing to life. The leadership was the person at the very top, the business owner, the CEO, whatever title. We went over this last week. There's so many different titles that can be used here. The president, whatever position you hold as the visionary. That's probably the best word to use in this case. The visionary is the one who lays this foundation and puts all this out. Now, the leaders that fall beneath the visionary, beneath that business owner, that the creator of this thing, are your supervisors and your managers and your team leads. Now, although they may have not created the vision, and you did as the top, you still place them in that position for a reason. They hopefully, the reason why they were placed in that position is because they understand the vision, and because they know how to implement the vision. They believe in the vision, and so it's very important to find, to really look at that and find the people that are going to be able to hold that position, and you be able to trust and know without a shadow of a doubt that they absolutely understand what it is that you have created here, and they're going to be able to implement it because they believe in it. And so this is why it falls on the leaders. This is why it falls on that leadership role. And so when we begin to think about that, this could be part of the problem. Let's start at the top. Maybe the leaders that you have placed in those positions don't really understand your vision. Maybe they were able to do one thing well, and so you trusted them with that, but they don't really understand the fullness of what you've created. I know that's a mouthful, but we have to get that understanding. We have to come to a place first where we're looking at the top and we're looking at those that have been placed in those leadership positions to fulfill this thing. I hope that makes sense. And so this is where we really dive into trying to figure out what the problem is. This is why we say it starts at the top. The problems start at the top. Burnout starts at the top. I'm going to say it over and over and over as many times as we need to. Repetition is learning. If we repeat it, we learn it. And so this is why we repeat a lot in these episodes, so that we can really grab hold of the truth and find a solution. And so when we're looking at the leaders in these positions, it could be your supervisor, it could be your managers, team leaders. They could be creating this culture of burnout and not even realize it themselves, because they may be receiving the same type of instruction, the same type of, these things that cause that burnout, these things, these problems that contribute to that burnout. And so if they're receiving it from the very top and it's coming down to them, and then they are now laying it out in the same format to the employees, those that are working for them and under them, this is where we have this kind of overflow of burnout culture that needs to be dealt with. Now, again, when we talk about these different issues in business, we're always going to focus on both sides. We don't just tap the problem on the leader only, or tap the problems on just the employees. There is a relationship here that both sides need to communicate, and both sides need to know how to work well together, and they need to know how to understand exactly what this vision is. I heard this week. I just want to throw this little side note in there. But there was someone who went into I'm just going to say a place, a business, looking to become a part of that particular business. And that's in quotes because I don't want to reveal who or what. But the issue is that when this individual asked the group of people, the group of leaders is the best way to describe them, what the vision was of that particular establishment, they couldn't answer it. They did not know. And so that is a real problem. That is a huge problem, to have people in those positions that don't even understand what your vision is. I'm going to push on this so much, because we can only experience success, true success, when we have people working with us and beside us who truly, truly understand what it is that you've created here. And so because these people could not answer that question, it left this person sitting there thinking, well, then what are you doing here? If you don't even understand the vision, you can't even explain it to me, you can't tell me, then would that really make me even want to be a part of something like this? Or is it going to make me want to come in and really have a full understanding of what the visionary wanted in this place, so that I can do a better job? I can do more in this position than what all these other people have done, because I believe in it and because I want to put action, behind my desire to help someone else be successful. And so I just want to throw that little example in there, because I'm sure this happens on a daily basis in so many different places. It's just something that's normal, and it should not be. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Here's a couple of things, a couple of reasons why burnout happens. And this is really looking at the top, okay? One of the things is when overwork is praised. That means, examples when staying late at your job, or maybe skipping lunch, really becomes a badge of honor. It's something where you can say it proudly, even though it's causing some stress and it's causing some problems there. It becomes this badge of honor to your superiors, to your bosses, to your leadership that is over you, and they look at you like, wow, look at that person. They stayed late today. I really feel like I need to reward them. Or they, instead of, having a full lunch, they took about 15 minutes, 20 minutes. They ate their food and they got right back to work. Now that's the kind of, person that I want working for me. But is it? Is it really a reason to be praised? Your employees are sacrificing their rest. They're sacrificing their time to be able to try to please you, or to maybe minimize the stress that they're already feeling from being overloaded with way too much work. And they're trying to rush to get things done. But yet leadership is placing a badge of honor on that. These are definitely red flags. I would expect a leader to see their employee jumping back into work and saying, wait a minute, aren't you on lunch? And be able to remind them, no, I need you to take your full hour. I need you to go relax somewhere. I do not approve of this. I want you to go, from the time that you clock out, or and mentally, maybe you're salaried, but from the time that you remove yourself from your work to have your lunch break or whatever break it is, go take care of you. Go do something for you, because that's more important right now. Because I need you at your fullest. I need you rested. I need you focused when you come back. I don't need you stressing over things. So go ahead and go take your break. Whatever it is that you're working on, it's still going to be there when you get back. And that's also saying that it shouldn't be a pressure placed on the employee that they have to get this done immediately, because that's where that stress begins to build. There needs to be some type of time management as well that is worked into these particular tasks and this work, even from the top. It needs to start at the top. All right, let's move on. This next one is a really, really big one. Boundaries don't exist. This is another one of those problems. Employees feel guilty about taking time off or even taking a break. Have you ever been there? I know I have. I'm thinking, well, I really wasn't feeling well today, so I'm going to call out. I think I just need to rest. And then the entire time I'm at home, I'm thinking about everything else that I could have been getting done. I'm going to have to do as soon as I get back on the next day, pending I'm feeling better. Oh man, I could have been finished with that project. And all these things run through our mind because we have not learned how to set boundaries. We don't know how to set those priorities and to say, no, you know what? I'm not feeling well today. I think I need to take care of me, or else I'm going to be no good to you. I'm going to take a break here and just throw these other episodes at you, because if this is an issue and you're struggling with setting boundaries, I want you to go back and listen to a couple of episodes. Episode 40 was how to set healthy boundaries in your everyday and work life. And so go back and listen to that. That's going to dive a little bit deeper into this topic. And then also, to go along with everything that we're talking about right now with burnout, there's episode 81, Are You Overwhelmed? And so those are two of the ones that are going to really speak to what it is that we're talking about currently with burnout culture. So again, episode 40, how to set healthy boundaries in your everyday and work life. And then episode 81, Are You Overwhelmed? So when you have a minute, go back and listen to those, and drop your comments and let me know what you think, if any of that was helpful to you. All right, so let's get back onto here. I could talk about boundaries and setting boundaries all day, but it's something that we really, really just need to learn how to implement and how to be bold with. And so go back and listen to those two episodes. All right, the next one is workload expectations are unrealistic. This is, maybe when one person might be doing the job of three, and leadership thinks that that's normal. So I'm sure a lot of people listening have been in that situation where you're thinking, I came in here to do a specific job. I have my job duties. I have a description of what my job position is. There's a whole list of what I'm responsible for. And then slowly things begin to get added. Now you have to do this. Now you may have to do that. You may lose a person in your office that used to do a whole bunch of these tasks, and now you have to jump in and, kind of take over some other areas. But at this point, what were your normal tasks, you're now suffering, or you may not be getting them done to the efficiency and excellence that you're used to, because now you have multiple items that were not originally yours. This happens everywhere. So it's not just in a certain industry, a certain area. I mean, you could work for a church, you could work for a nonprofit, you could work for retail. It doesn't matter. You could be in a government office building. This happens everywhere. And this is a huge part of burnout, because now you're being overloaded, once again, with more than what you originally had. Not that you can't do it, but would it be easier to have another individual that is going to focus primarily on those things, so that you can focus primarily on your tasks, and you're both getting it done at a level of excellence that is helping this establishment or this organization grow, like healthy grow. All right, like I said, we're just touching on some of these issues. So I want you to just really think about them as we're going through them, and ask yourself, is that me? Have I been there? Is that me right now? Is this something that could be causing, this stress in my life, or something that I thought was normal because it was perceived as normal, because leadership made it look like it was normal? I mean, it goes up the chain, right? So we don't recognize these things because we're almost kind of made to feel guilty to even question it. And that should never be the case. Okay, so here's the next one that goes in line with that. The pressure never stops. There's always one more thing to do before you can breathe. Have you ever been there? Absolutely, yes. Not even, we are going beyond the realm of business here. We're talking about just life in general. There's always one more thing. And you feel like you can't complete your day until that one more thing is done. So what happens? We finish that one thing, and then there's always another thing. I used to be like this. I had a list made. I would have to finish everything on that list, and if I didn't, I felt like I failed. I was a failure for the day. I would go to bed just, frustrated, overwhelmed, upset, in tears. And thank God for my husband, who, looked at me one day and said, Jen, just even if you only got one thing done for the day, at least you got it done. So focus on completing the thing before you move on to the next. So now I do that in my everyday work. I do work a day job. I do own my business. And so I'm on both sides here, leader and employee, which makes it wonderful to be able to talk about these subjects, because there's so much experience and history from my past and all the different industries that I've been in, that it's just really great to share that experience with you. But right now, in my day job, what I do is I sit down and at the beginning of the week, and I make a list. I may sit down with my manager, make a list of everything that I need to get done, everything that may be a new task, a new project. Write it down along with the things that I have as daily tasks, weekly tasks. And my first question is always, which ones are a priority? Which ones need to be done? So I may walk away with a list of 8 to 10 things for that entire week. Extensive things, and some that are very easy to get done. But my question is, what is the priority? And I'll put a star next to the top 2 or 3. That tells me during that week, I need to make sure that those 3 things are completed. That is my focus. Complete one before I move on to the next, and then complete the next, and before I move on to the third. If I get those things done within the first couple of days of that week, then I move into those smaller tasks to make sure that they also get done. But there's not a pressure and a stress on me to have to complete that list. And I will tell you, since doing that, everything on my list is pretty much done by the end of the week, because I placed a focus on the most important things, instead of ending up with 5 to 6 things that are halfway done, a quarter of the way done. It is just learning how to remove that pressure and not allow anybody else to make you feel like everything is pending important, or is something that is urgent. But speaking up and just asking the questions. What is most important to you right now? So I can start on that first. It really pushes your management and your leadership to have to think as well. Well, you know what is the most important thing? What do we need to make sure that we get done? And it puts it back on them. And that's okay. Why? Because they're your leader. It's their responsibility. It is their responsibility to lead you in the right way. And so we can remove this pressure, but it's going to be something that you're going to run into. So just remember, there's always going to be one more thing. There will always be one more thing. It never stops. But you can stop and breathe. You can take a minute to say, you know what? I think I can put that one off for just a little while because I need to make sure this is taken care of. Or I'm done for the day. 5 o'clock hits. That's it. I'm not doing anything else. I personally have a rule. This is my own personal, just out of respect for other people. I do not text or call people before 9 o'clock in the morning, unless it's something, business related where I know that they are expecting to hear from me, or it's family. That is the only time. And even then, y'all, come on, with my parents, I still will not text them before 8 o'clock. Actually, before 9 o'clock sometimes, because they're in a different state, an hour behind me. And so, out of respect, they may have decided to rest a little bit longer today, this morning, something like that. And then I don't text or call anybody past 7 in the evening, unless, once again, it is family or it is very important. If I absolutely have to miss something the next day and I need to let someone know that I'm not going to be there, then yes, that's urgent. That's important. I don't want to leave them hanging. But if it has anything to do with regular work, you're not going to hear from me. So 9 a.m. to 7 is when you can communicate with me. I'll communicate back. But the other hours, those are mine. And they're my family's. And that is our time. And so this is where we learn to really value and treasure our own time. And we teach others to do the same. That's all part of setting boundaries as well. Teaching others to understand. That's not going to change about you. Because if they really want the best out of you, they'll respect that. All right, so let's move on to this last one real quick. And this is kind of a two-part today because we're talking about why burnout starts at the top. And then we're also going to jump into how to fix burnout culture in the workplace. And so, again, all pertaining to the leadership side, okay? So leaders model exhaustion. If your boss is constantly working late and responding to emails at midnight, then employees will feel like they have to do the same. This is 100% true. If we don't know how to shut it down, that we just talked about, there's always going to be one more thing, and you need to learn to breathe. If we don't learn how to shut it down, shut our mind down, close up shop, and take time for us, then this is where we go back to part 1. What is burnout? This emotional, physical, mental exhaustion, insomnia, not being able to sleep, because our mind is constantly running with things that should not be important in that moment. We have a work day and a work schedule for a reason. Some people it's, 8 to 5. Some people it might be 7 to 4, 9 to 5. You may work nights. Whatever your shift is, that is why it's a shift. It is a schedule. It is a block of time. Outside of that block of time, you're not getting paid. You're not working. You're not in an office. You're not in a building. So it's time to shut it off. If your leaders are modeling this exhaustion, if you see them operating in this way, that is a huge red flag. It means they're going to expect you to do the same things that they do. It's not being in a position of, well, I made the sacrifice because, I care so much about what I do and I just can't break away from it. Yes, it's not that you can. I'm not saying yes you can. I'm saying yes you need to. You have to learn to separate. Visionaries are the ones that live and breathe and run 24/7 on these things because they're building it, because their heart is completely in it, because it is 100% part of their life. If you have a visionary, their family members, whether it's a wife is a visionary and their husband is their support, or the husband is the visionary and the wife is a support, they will operate and work together on that. But they also have to set time to shut it down and turn it off so that they can have their own time together with their children, with their family members. So the visionaries, there's this little bit of an excuse, an allowance for them to be able to do that. But as far as the leadership that is placed in position to help lead the team, they have to model the same thing in their life that should be expected of their employees, which is to not create this burnout culture, but to really value time and understand that we have to take care of ourselves too. So I want you to understand this. Burnout is not a sign of a strong work ethic at all. Burnout does not show this person has a strong work ethic. This company has a strong work ethic. It is absolutely not a sign of that. It's a sign of a broken system. Some people may not agree with me on that, but just watch it. Watch it unravel. Watch it break down over time if it is not corrected. We do not want a burnout culture. This is where you begin to see a revolving door. You begin to see people quitting. You begin to see people getting sick. People are no longer able to function. People are frustrated with each other. They're arguing about the most menial things. The system is breaking down. And so I will say it again, burnout is not a sign of a strong work ethic. It's a sign of a broken system. Pay attention to it. I want you to just take time to watch that. If you happen to be in this type of culture, just watch it. Be very vigilant in just watching how things operate, and you will literally see the system breaking down. It's not something that we hope for, ever. And a lot of times, when I see this occurring, it makes me sit there and really want to do something about it. Really want to jump in there and fix things. But here's the issue. When you have other people that are leading that burnout culture, and they are unwilling to recognize it or to change things, there's nothing that you can say in that moment to help change those things. It has to come from the top. And so we can change it for ourselves as individuals, and as a help to our fellow employees, we can step in and try to be the person that establishes more of a calm atmosphere, more of an encouraging atmosphere, and hope that it latches on to everyone else and everything else that is happening in that atmosphere. We can do everything that we can, but as a leader, if I'm the leader in that position, and we have done this many times in our own business, and we see an issue and we see a problem, we see things breaking down, we go to the root of it. We will sit down and discuss together, the leaders, what we feel the problem may be. We will sit down and talk to those that are helping and working with us on projects and make sure that we have an understanding of what they feel. It's very important to listen at all times, and do not speak until there is an open door to have conversation about these things, not to come back and lash out, about what you think is right and what they're saying is wrong. This is why I say both sides, a lot of times, the majority of the times, both sides are at fault. And it's just a moment where you have to learn to work together. You have to be willing to listen to each other. Otherwise, the system never gets fixed. Here's another sign when we're talking about leadership. So when we talk about it, being a broken system, one of the worst parts, and you'll see this happen quite often, instead of fixing the system, like I just mentioned, stepping in and being able to try to figure out what's going on at the root of the issue, instead of fixing the system, leaders will often blame the employees. I want to give you a couple examples of what this might sound like. They could say things like, you need to manage your time better. Isn't that one that we have all heard, seen? You can even see things like this on TV. A leader saying, oh, I think you just need to manage your time better. How is that even helping them? How is that stepping in to help solve help this issue, and help them figure out what that even means? It's just placing the blame. Another one might be, maybe you're just not cut out for this. Have we all heard that one? We may have heard it about other people. We may have heard it from people about other people. And you know what? I just don't think they're cut out for this. Or maybe, they're just not meant to be here. Or they're just not a good match. It's so easy to place that problem and that blame on somebody else. Here's another one, especially when we're talking about mental health, and there's this big uprise on mental health and everything. But have you tried self-care? Well, first of all, what is that? Would be a lot of people's response, because they're not familiar enough with it. And second of all, with what time? Have I tried self-care? What time do I even have to try anything with self-care, because I'm so busy working on stuff for you? And then it goes back to maybe you need to manage your time better. You see how all this comes full circle? So those are just a couple of examples. There's so many more. But that is going to be one of those big problems as well. It's, instead of fixing the system, because I really don't feel like there's a system that needs to be fixed, let me just put the blame on the employee. Let's just say that it's their issue and their problem, and we'll just get somebody else, who's going to do what we need and expect them to do. This is very dangerous as well, because it leaves the organization lacking in necessary help, and now they're scrambling to try to find somebody to fill that person's position that wasn't a good fit, and they may find somebody else that isn't a good fit. So the cycle never ends, you guys. It just keeps going on and on. All right, but let's get to some of the good stuff. And we've talked a lot about, some of these things that happen from the top down. Some of the ways that we can recognize this from our leaders. And so now I want to jump into, wait a minute. There was one more point that I wanted to make. We're talking about that self-care part here, and I knew there was a thought that I was forgetting. But listen, I just want you to hear me. Hear me good on this one. Self-care isn't the solution to burnout, okay? The culture change is. So leaders really need to stop placing the burden on employees and start taking responsibility for the environments that they create. I know that may sound like a very harsh statement, but it really wraps up everything that we were just talking about. They have to take responsibility. And a little humility doesn't hurt either. But take responsibility for these environments that they create. They're at the top for a reason, y'all. Leaders are at the top. I have to face this every day in my own business. I am the leader. And so my environment, this atmosphere that we strive to create for our people, it is, that's very important to us. And if anything in the environment feels off, okay, let's look at, I love talking about gardening and plants and things, but if you walk into a greenhouse and you see that some of the plants are wilted, some of them are leaning over, but you also feel this humidity in the air, You might be breathing a little differently because you can tell there's a different level of the oxygen that's in there. And so you immediately know, wow, wait, something's off in this environment. It's a closed environment, this greenhouse. It's meant to allow these plants to thrive, but something is off in the environment. We have to get to a point where we can recognize that in our own businesses. We have to be able to be in tune, in touch with our vision, with our ears, listening and watching, with our eyes, our senses, our nose. You can walk in and you can either smell the fresh plants, or you can smell that something is wilted and rotting and dying. We have these senses for a reason. God gave them to us. So we need to use them, and we need to really focus and tap into what is happening in this environment. It's not invisible. You know, other people may not be able to see it to the naked eye, but for you, as the leader or the visionary, you should be able to sense and to feel and to see these things in your own people. And so I'm going to leave that right there because it's very important. That's part of the relationship that we always talk about. We say that the foundation to all things when it comes to business is communication and relationship. That is a standard for us. And so it was very important for me to break that down for you. All right, so let's move on. So now we're going to jump into a little bit of how leadership can fix this burnout culture, and how leadership can really shape the workplace, around this burnout. So here's a key statistic for you. Employees who feel supported are 75% more likely to stay with a company. 75%. It's not giving you that full 100. But if you at least support them, if you're showing them that you care about them and not just the work, you're trying to help them be successful. You're not looking for every flaw and every problem in what they do. You're not ready to pinpoint, certain things. You're not looking for the excuses, but you're really trying to, I'm going to say it again, establish the communication and the relationship with them. And they truly feel supported. They are 75% more likely to stay with the company, to stay with your company. A lot of people don't talk about that other 25%. Why would there be 25%? Why can't they just give us the full 100? Well, for employees, we have to remember as well, they may not be in a place where they're, in their heart and their mind, they're not expecting to stay with your company forever. We talk a lot about this in Expressions of Destiny with our employee coaching and customer service training, is that a lot of things are seasonal. Employees are seasonal. It may not be a seasonal position, meaning, for the 3 months of the holidays or a summertime, or, this is how we read that from the world's perspective. But when we talk more about spiritually, our seasons can last a year. They could last 2 years, 5 years. A season could be 10 years. A season could be 6 months. And so that individual season at a certain place is going to be different from another individual. And that's okay. We have to understand that even if someone walked out tomorrow, they fulfilled their season. But that 75% that are more likely to stay with a company, they were part of that 75. They stayed there as long as they needed to until another opportunity opened, or maybe God just shifted them out. And so maybe it wasn't that they were trying to run away from your place, but they just felt that there was something else and they were ready to move. And so they end up leaving on good terms. They end up leaving, being grateful for the time that they spent in your company, but they just knew that it was time to go. And that's okay. And so I love to look at that extra 25% as those types of scenarios and situations, because if they're more willing and more likely to stay with you, 75%, We got to leave that little bit of room for them to actually grow and be excited about moving on to a new opportunity at some point when their season is up. But that 75% is so important because you still want them to feel appreciated and loved, like they made a difference in your company. So here's a couple of ways that we can begin to change that burnout culture. One of the first ones is to set realistic workloads and expectations. We have to be willing to look at the workload and say, is it really something that they can possibly get done within, a 2-week time, or are they going to need a month? Is this a task that can be done daily and achievable and accomplished? And so they can walk away every day knowing that this one task is something they had to do and they got it done for the day. It wasn't something that they had to push off till tomorrow. So it's really just it's the leader stopping and having to think, the work that I'm giving them, is it realistic? Is it something that I would be able to get done within a work day? Not taking it home and trying to complete it, for a couple more hours after. No, it's within your work day. Is it realistic? It's very important for you to be able to balance your goals with your employees' well-being. To stop for a moment and think about them. Think about where their mind and their heart is in that moment. Are they going to be able to give their all in what it is that you're asking them to do? And also offering support when it's needed. They may begin the task and they're going for it, and then they encounter an issue or a problem. Some leadership may walk up and say, well, I need you to figure it out. And then there may be other leadership that walks up and says, sure, okay, show me what you're doing. Let me go ahead. Let's go over this real quick just to see, what it is that you're having a problem with. There's 2 different types of leaders right there. And so I just want to throw that out there so that you can begin to recognize that. All right, so let's move on. The next one, improve your communication and your transparency. We've been talking a lot about communication, but transparency as well is so important. Leaders have to be able to clearly define their expectations, and the transparency part where that comes in is they have to be willing to listen. You as a leader have to be willing to take feedback and take it to heart and not get offended. Because sometimes there might just be a misunderstanding, but we're so quick to get offended and to snap back that we don't take time to really listen to the other person's heart and what it is that they're feeling. Or maybe they just misinterpreted you or misinterpreted something that you expected them to do. And so that communication is so important, but the transparency is what really builds that relationship. You really want to foster more of like an open, 2-way communication. This is the bottom line right here. It's not one-sided. It's not, I need you to listen to what I'm going to tell you. And then when you try to talk back to me, or not talk back, but give me, an explanation of what it is that's going on, I'm not going to attack you. I'm not going to get offended and take your words and say, did you just say that to me? No, we have to be willing to stop and listen, because we are going to hear things that we don't want to hear. We're going to be told things that we don't want to hear. And that's where that humility comes in as well, to be able to say, you know what, maybe I did come off the wrong way. Maybe I did say something and I didn't realize I was saying it with a certain tone. We have to check ourselves. A great leader will always check themselves first and will not lash out at the other people until they have checked themselves first. It is so important. This next one is just something that can be so simple, but it seems like it's so hard to do. As a leader, you should always encourage breaks and time off. We talked a little bit about this earlier with, it looking like a badge of honor when you skip your lunch and when you don't take time off and you stay late for work, and you make that more of a priority over your own personal life. But as the leader, you should be the one to encourage that break. You should be the one that is saying, no, why don't you go ahead and, take some extra days throughout the year, or you have all of this vacation time. Make sure that you use it. Make sure that you plan out a couple of trips. Let's talk about the schedule because, we may have some things of importance that are going on throughout the year. There's audits and there's events and there's, different projects, whatever it is that may be worked on. But I want to make sure that we're able to work around this schedule the best possible and allow you to go and utilize your time so that you can have those breaks and that rest. This is all part of that communication as well, the importance of it, So leadership has to be able to model this healthy behavior by taking breaks and prioritizing their time off as well. And so that's another red flag. If you see that your leader is very rarely taking time off, maybe they take time off, but they're still available for you. They're still answering emails and answering phone calls. That is not true time off. That's not separating yourself from the everyday workload and the stress and overwhelm, all these other things. So pay attention to, because the way that a leader models that in their own life, once again, is going to be a reflection of how they expect you to handle your time off and your breaks, whether you even get time off or breaks. So I think we have dove into a lot here today. And again, our focus was on the leader. This is not throwing all of the blame on the leader. It is understanding that it starts at the top. And leaders can get caught up in this type of behavior as well. And this is why this burnout culture ends up happening. It ends up being established in a company that maybe never had these types of issues, and it needs to be fixed. It is a broken system that needs to be fixed. And so I want to go ahead and leave it there. We've gone over a lot, and it's really just real talk. We're just sharing, these feelings, these emotional, physical, mental points of exhaustion that drive us to not want to be the best that we can possibly be for the place that we are currently in because it's broken. And so what can we do to help fix that? And this is what we do. We talk about the hard things and we talk about both sides, leadership and employees. So next week, we're going to dive into the employee side of burnout. What does it look like when employees are struggling, and really how they can take the first step in finding support. So again, we're going to focus a lot on the communication and the transparency, because as a leader, you have to be willing to listen. And so if your employees are crying out to you, they are just not in a physical sense, okay? They're not like at your feet begging. But if they're looking for that support, they can't be afraid to speak up either. And so we're going to dive into that employee side next week. But again, take everything that I share with you to heart. I've been there. I've experienced it. I've been on both sides as the business owner and the leader and as the employee. I've been in full-time ministry. It happens there too, a lot. So we don't exclude that. And then just our own personal lives. I've been in a lot of industries, different, like absolutely different, opposite sides of industries. And I just share my experience with you. And so if you have any questions, feel free to drop your comments under this episode. Make sure that you follow us on all of the, or whichever platform that you're using. You can always find the rest of our episodes at eodproduction.podbean.com. I'll go ahead and put that in the description of this episode as well. Again, go back and listen to episode 40, How to Set Healthy Boundaries in Your Everyday and Work Life, and episode 81, Are You Overwhelmed? These are really great exactly what it says, overwhelm, and really learning how to set boundaries in your life. All right, so that is it for me today, you guys. We will be back next Friday with the third part of this series on burnout, and I don't know, we might go longer than that. There's a lot to this topic, and we'll just see where it leads. So in the meantime, have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you back here next Friday. God bless.